Pre-Algebra Lesson 6-8. Percent of change. Percent of change is the percent a quantity increases or decreases from its original amount. You will hear all the time when they're trying to tell you you have a great sale, it is 50% off, or you're only paying 20% of the original price, okay? Or things of outrageous proportions like that. You really should know whether or not they're telling you the truth, and the best way to do that is if you understand how to deal with percent of change. To find the percent of increase or a decrease, you simply set up a proportion. You figure out the amount of change, put it over the original amount, set that up equal to x over 100, and solve your proportion. It's actually a very simple process. Let's take a look at a few problems. I need to find the percent of change. We're going to round to the nearest tenth or tenth of a percent if necessary, and we will tell whether or not the change is an increase or a decrease. Let's take a look at this first problem. 8 to 9.6. Well, the amount of change, if we look at it, when take the bigger number, subtract the smaller number, you're going to get 1.6. That is my amount of change. You don't need to do a negative or positive because we don't deal with the negative or positive. That's taken care of in whether or not you're telling me it's an increase or a decrease. Okay, so the amount of change will always be a positive number. You just always subtract the smaller number from the larger number. So my amount of change was 1.6. My original amount was 8, because that was the first number given. That's always the original amount. The original amount is always the first number given, especially when it says this to something else. 8 to 9.6. This equals x over 100. Solve this proportion. 8x equals 160. 1.6 times 100 is 160. Take 160, divide it by 8. And x equals 20. So we had a 20%, and since we went from 8 to 9.6, it got bigger. This is an increase. Fairly simple process. It's easy to tell if it's an increase or decrease. If your number went up, it's an increase. If your number went down, it's a decrease. Let's look at problem number 2. 100 to 114. The amount of change is 14. We went up 14. The original amount is 100 equals x over 100. Cross multiply. 1400 equals 100x. It doesn't matter which side of the equation your variable is on. Divide by 100. X equals 14. So it's a percent, because it's a percent of change. And again, my number went up, so it's an increase. As you can see, it is not really difficult to do a percent of change problem. All you have to remember is you have to find the amount of change first, put that over your original amount, and then set up the proportion x over 100. Let's look at 2 more problems. 2 to 3.2. 3.2 minus 2 is 1.2, so the amount of change is 1.2. My original is 2. That's going to equal x over 100. Because we went 3.2 minus 2.0, that's how we got 1.2. Find your amount of change first. Okay. So 3.2 to 2.2 is 2.0, gave me a 1.2 difference. By cross multiply, 2x equals 120. Because 1.2 times 100 is 120. 120 divided by 2. Hopefully you can even do this one without your calculator. X equals 60. So it's a 60% increase. You might look at it and say, wow, that seems like a huge increase for such a small number. But that's because it was such a small number. 4,000 to 8,500. So if I take 8,500 and I subtract 4,000, I'm going to get 4,500. So my amount of change, 4,500. My original amount, 4,000 equals x over 100. So 4,000x equals 450,000, because 4,500 multiplied by 100 means I need to add 2 zeros. So 450,000. 450,000 divided by 4,000 Okay, divide both sides by 4,000. Make sure you put all those zeros in your calculator. Or better yet, realize we can cancel all these zeros out. 1, 2, 3, so we're basically taking 450 and dividing it by 4. If you take 450 divided by 4, you'll get the same number as if you take 450,000 and divide it by 4,000. We get x equals 112.5%. Again, this terminated, so we don't need to round it or anything. So it's 112.5%, and again, it's an increase. Lots of increases here. Lots of things going up. Last two examples, 1250 to 120. Excuse me, 1250 to 1120. 1,250 minus 1,120. Okay, 1,250. And you subtract 1,120. You will get 130. So my amount of change was 130. My original amount was 1,250. That equals x over 100. 1,250x equals 13,000. Divide this by 1,250. 13,000 divided by 1,250 is 10.4. So it's a 10.4%, and in this case, it went down, so it's a decrease. Last example, 202 to 192. We take 202, we subtract 192. 202 minus 192, we get 10. So the amount of change is 10 over my original amount, which is 202. That's going to equal x over 100. So 202x equals 1,000, because 100 times 10 is 1,000. Divide by 202. We'll cancel out. X will equal 1,000 divided by 202, which in this case does not terminate. 4.9504950 keeps going. Remember, it said, if you remember, it said round to the nearest percent, or tenth of a percent, or the nearest tenth. However, I think it was nearest tenth of a percent. Let's check that. Round to the nearest tenth of a percent. Yep. So to the nearest tenth, here we have, there's my tenths place. The 5 makes it go up, doesn't it? It makes the 9 go to a 10, makes the 4 go to a 5, and I need to have that 0 in that place value so that I can tell people that I have definitely gone to that place value. So it's 5%. Okay, 5.0%, and it is a decrease. Finding percent of change. Finding the amount of change, putting that over the original, equals x over 100, solve the proportion. A very simple process.